Hello and welcome back to another Diecast rescue. Today we're going to be dealing with Corgi number 256, which is a Volkswagen Beetle 1200 rally car for the East African Safari. This is actually a very interesting model because it has steering, which is operated from the roof, and it has full independent suspension, as well as an opening bonnet and a opening trunk, or where you can sort of see the engine. You've got various internal components, but in this case we are missing one of the wheels and axles. This is quite a nicely detailed model. It has an engine compartment with a reasonably accurate representation of the Volkswagen Beetle engine, so hopefully it can focus. There's a lot of chrome work. For some reason there's got a pair of Wellingtons in the boot, but I'm not quite sure what the round thing's meant to be. And the steering mechanism on top of the car is actually broken, so we're going to have to try and sort that out. So the car is held together with three quite fine rivets, which I'm going to drill out now to get the base plate off. The rivets are actually very shallow, so I don't think I'm going to be able to use screws to reattach the base plate, and I might have to resort to gluing it back on, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. As the car comes apart, you'll realise it's actually quite a complicated model, and you have to wonder how much this model cost when it was new, and if Corgi actually made any money on it. Now I think you'll start to see the amount of components in the car to achieve the features that this car has. The steering mechanism there is just kind of held in with a slot, which can be removed by just twisting it out. Now, as I've already mentioned, the car has an opening bonnet, an opening boot, detailed engine, steering, and it also has independent suspension on that steering as well, which is very clever. Now here you can see that the actual steering wheel is actually broken, so I'm going to have to find some way of fixing that. Now you can see the car comes detailed with a pair of silver Wellingtons in the boot, which is in the front of the car on this, obviously. So it's very Elton John possibly. But there you go. So I'm not quite sure what the round thing's meant to be, as I believe it's just a fuel tank and spare wheel are supposed to go in the boot of a VW. Okay, so we take the glass off, which is actually in fairly good condition. It's just a bit grubby, and it has VW written on it somewhere. Now we're just taking out the interior tub, which is quite simple and is used to hold the bonnet on. Now you can see the steering mechanism, and the remainder of the brown plastic is actually the suspension. So you can see the front suspension is independent and can steer, and you've got a sort of van type suspension on the rear. I have absolutely no idea what that little post is for. It just sort of sticks into the area under the bonnet and doesn't seem to do anything. Now you can see the broken axle, and what it is the part that the wheel is on is actually just a press fit into an opening in the little casting. For some reason it's fallen out on this car and it's been lost. So here you got a close-up of the good axle, and you can see it's got a single wheel pressed into that bit of die cast. And now on the other axle you can see where the hole is, where the axle should have gone. So we're going to have to find something to replace that with. Now with all the parts laid out, you can see this is actually quite a complicated vehicle. So it must have been quite labour intensive to have assembled this. Okay, to replace the missing wheel and axle on the car, and also to replace the steering wheel on top, I have this spare axle from a scrap Land Rover, Corgi Land Rover, that we're going to use as a donor to repair this. Don't worry, the Land Rover is going to feature in a video at some point. Okay, so basically we're just going to snap off the Land Rover's axle in half, and then we're going to reduce the length of the remaining part of the shaft so it fits into the existing Volkswagen steerable axle housing. Now the Land Rover's axle has just been pressed by gently tapping the Land Rover axle shaft into the metal casting, where it is now quite firmly fixed. Now the steering wheel that goes on top of the car is basically a fake plastic wheel which will have a rubber tyre on it. This is attached to the shaft, which in turn then turns the steering mechanism below. So what I propose to do with this is actually cut the wheel off the top of it and glue on a metal real wheel from the Land Rover. Now I don't have very many tools, so the only thing I have available to cut this in half is a hacksaw. So I shall hold the part in place with a pair of pliers and begin cutting. Close your eyes if you're of a nervous disposition. Okay, so you can see that there's a hole for the shaft to go all the way up into the wheel itself. So what I'm going to do is, because I can't really drill a hole through the wheel, what I'm going to put in as a replacement, I will just cut the end off the shaft, because the shaft's longer than it really needs to be anyway. Okay, and time for the proverbial bit of paint stripper. There's three metal components in this car that's going to be stripped, so it's got your boot, your bonnet and your main shell. Now I don't know what paints Corgi were using on this particular model, but it took a couple of goes to actually soften the paint, and eventually I ended up leaving it overnight in a sealed container to see if that would actually remove it. Very strong stuff. I'm actually using a recycled Indian takeaway container for this, and it does look rather like I've dipped the thing in curry. But the paint stripper has more or less done it. I'm going to have to resort to a bit of sanding to get this all off, I think. Okay, after a lot of sanding, scraping and brushing, we've got all the paint off. And we're now down to a nice shiny casting. Quite a lot of detail on the model, and it's quite a good looking car. Obviously as well, we'll be giving this a good wash in soapy water to get any residues off. Now I'm painting this in Tamiya X7, which is a gloss acrylic paint, and we're not colouring this in any way, not tinting it, we're just going to use the colour Neat. And I'm going to give this a couple of coats. I'm just painting the bonnet or engine cover, depending on what you like to call it. Now we're just painting the bonnet, or boot. Gets very confusing on the VW. Okay, I'm using some Vallejo aluminium. We're just going to do some detailing like for the bumpers, badges, chrome work, etc. I forgot to mention that I sprayed the underside of the car, the base plate, black, as all VWs that I remember as a kid, they're always black underneath, and they used to leak a bit of oil. They had very nice chrome bumpers, which were always going rusty if I remember right. So it seems to me a more correct paint scheme. So I'm just detailing the exhaust pipes. And the chrome rear bumper. Okay, so as usual, getting all the remaining plastic components and giving them a good washing. Now I'm just going to use some metal polish to clean up the clear components of the windscreen. And as usual as well, we've just given the plastic windscreen a dip in floor polish, and we're just going to leave it somewhere safe to dry now. Okay, so now detailing the actual car body itself. So under the bonnet areas, or boot. Not quite sure what you meant to say on the VW. I still don't really know what this is for, because you don't see it on VWs that I remember anyway. I assume this is like a handle for a toolbox or something. Okay, so here I'm going to paint the boots black so they look like Wellingtons. Although admittedly after a while it started to occur to me maybe they look like leather boots, so maybe it wasn't too successful. Okay, so now we have all the finished components of the car laid out. So I have a car shell, the engine cover, bonnet, the tub for the seats, the suspension, the base plate, new tyres, newly cleaned windows, the back axle, the repaired front steering components, steering shaft, the new steering wheel which has been glued together. These are the pins which pivot the front suspension, steering units. The pin, which I have no idea what it does, just sticks through that hole, and the actual steering arm, and of course the dual headlights which were undamaged. So first things first, we'll just press back in the dual headlights. They just click in. Okay, so first thing first is I put the steering wheel and the glass into the roof of the shell. Pop the bonnet in. I have to pop the seats in because they hold the bonnet in place. Just making sure the key engages. This is actually the third time I assembled the car because every time I seem to do it wrong. Okay, so the column's now engaged with the wheel on the roof. Now we're fitting the suspension and the steering arm. Now the pins for the front turning axles. So I'm looking around the camera, so sometimes I can't judge the distance too well. I pop on the one axle. Now we pop on the next one. As you can see, there's quite a lot going on inside this car. I'll just get the engine cover on. Now we drop on the back axle. I should imagine in the factory the girls who were doing this a lot quicker than I was. Okay, now we put on the base plate. And this is about where I realise I've made a mistake. Because as you notice, I've got a part left over, which is that little weird pin that sticks up under the bonnet. So I'll quickly take the car apart again, pop that pin back in, and reassemble the car. Now I have to admit, I think the car's turned out really nice and looks very good. Admittedly, this is a custom paint job, but even so I'm quite pleased with it. The bonnet and the engine cover now are actually quite tight. I think that's probably down to the new paint and cleaning. There you go, you can see that little weird screw thing's in its place. Now as the posts that were holding the car together were very short and very narrow, I've decided just to use a bit of super glue to actually hold the car back together again, and hopefully I've put it on in such a way that a little bit of a drill will actually remove the glue and allow the car to be disassembled if it needs to be in the future. Okay, a little bit more detailing now, again with the aluminium. I'm going to paint in the VW badges. And I'm also going to paint in things like the door handles. This bump on the back is actually a light that illuminates the number plate below, which isn't actually on the model, but all the cars I always remember, this was always chromed. Now I'm going to apply some decals or decals to the car to put some numbers on it. I'm using Microsol to sort of soften up the transfers so they settle onto the car. Now the numbers are actually spare transfers from a Matchbox Heinkel 111 kit. So if you're of a certain age you'll remember those. And these are spare set transfers that were never used, and they just so happen to be the right size for the car. So the car was an 18, but now it's a 20. Well, after all that, I think the car turned out very well. And all we'd have to do now is get the car onto the turntable. Steering's very handy. So if you like what you've seen, please leave a like. If you think I could have done things better, please, by all means leave a comment. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, please subscribe. And thank you for watching.